In this tutorial we're going to talk about doing some output. I have some remnants of what we had from the Rider designer here, but I'm just going to leave that. And what we want to do when we're ready for output, we click export and another window pops up. And this window has several boxes in it and some buttons, and I'm going to show you what they mean. First thing is the rib thickness. What size of plywood are we going to make this out of? What I'm going to do is create ribs, and I'm going to go over here and show ribs. And take a look at the box while we do this. I'm going to drag that around a little bit. We can see here that we've created some ribs. I'm going to show you, see that gap right there between the nose rib and the first, this is a nose rib, and then the first fuselage rib going back from it. There's a gap in there. That's that 1/2 inch of the plywood. The thin layers shown here would be the most posterior side of the plywood being shown. I don't show both sides. And the rib will be cut to that dimension. So over here towards the back side, the ribs will be cut this way, with the edges being the biggest part. But here the rib is too big for the nose, so you have to sand those down, and on the back side the ribs would barely touch. But I thought about that for a while, and I decided that's what I wanted to do, so that's what you guys got to. It won't be, I mean, we got a lot of sanding in front of us anyway, so I don't think it's a problem. But anyway, here's where you adjust where the first rib is from the nose. Let's change that and create ribs, and you can see that they move forward there. There's a little bitty nose piece there, still a 1/2 inch. I'm going to change the rib thickness to 2-inch plywood. I'm going to create ribs, and we can see that our gap changed over here. We've got big old enough room for a 2-inch piece of plywood. Let's go back to 1/2 inch and create the ribs again. And let's go to 10 inches and create the ribs. And let's change the spacing to 10 inches and create ribs. Now all we've done so far is just create some pictures in code. We haven't actually created our CNC files or any of that stuff. So when you click create PNGs, it actually does all the real work, and here's just some semblance of what they look like. We have kind of perhaps a little bit of a funky tail box here. Looks like I got a little bit of a notch down here. That shouldn't really be much of a problem. Just, you know, sand it rounded there. But that's beyond the biggest part of the thing anyway, and I'm not going to worry too much about it. And I don't think you're going to see that show up on the CNC file or the actual printable things. It just shows up here. Looks like that here. There's also these little die patterns here are what you pick out for your patterns, and every time you do that it creates new PNGs. And there's always a center line, because no matter what pattern you pick, you need a center line hole here, or too many of these won't get it. In some shapes it won't get them. But there's several options for clicking out what kind of patterns you want, and I try to check and see if they're going to fit. And even though it looks like this one doesn't fit, I had a 1/2 inch around there, I wouldn't do it. You can change these are all standard conduit out, thin wall EMT standard outside diameters. You can pick those out from here. It isn't user settable. I'm sorry about that. We can maybe do that sometime too if it's really a problem. But anyway, there's the dimensions, and here's what you get for the PNG files. Well, let's take a look at that. First of all, where's these files go? Let's go back to the frame designer and say File, Save Project As. This is where everything goes. So this is one way to get to this is open up a Windows Explorer and type in %appdata%, and it'll take you to the parent directory of this, and you can click on HPV design and see it. And whenever you do any output, the output shows up here, and it's in an output directory for whatever the project name was. And since I clicked project file, I was looking for HPV files, but I'm just clicking all files in my Windows Explorer. Had I got to it through the Windows Explorer directly, it would have shown me the files right off the bat. But we have here's our files laying in here. We have a lot of files laying in here. You know, what are all these things? Well, here's some debug check once, and you can delete those. They don't actually matter. I'm going to select one and delete it. Doesn't matter. What I'm going to do now is load up one of the rib files. Let me go to a regular Windows Explorer to do that, so I'm not doing this through my application. And again, %app data, %, and HPV design, and then the output. And let me click on one of these ribs. Let's click on a big one. And the next tutorial will be how to get this to print. But while I'm still here, I'm going to show you that here's some text files that say CNC on them. If you click on one of those, Notepad's opening up here for me as my default text viewer. You can see these are all CNC codes in to cut that thing, and I'm going to find where we start to cut the holes here. You can see we have a Z lift of a ½ inch for our ½ inch plywood, and then a translation over, and then a plunge of a ½ inch. And that actually, I probably should extend that. I probably should lift bigger for that lift. But anyway, there's a CNC file. What you could do, I'm probably lifting my actual thickness of my plywood. What you could do is tell it that you had 5/8 inch plywood. If I don't get that fixed for the release, put in 5/8 inch plywood and let it do that. And that'll make your nose piece a little bit off, but it'll only be off by 1/8 of an inch of glue or something. But I'll probably fix that before I release it anyway. But anyway, that's your CNC codes, and I'll show you how to do to take your PNGs and print those in the next one. I will talk about while I'm still here. Let's take a look at. Sometimes when you go to print, you're allowed to set this horizontal and vertical dots per inch resolution. Sometimes you're not. The most common printer resolution is 72 dots per inch, but sometimes the PNG loaders think that you've used a screen resolution, which is often 96 dots per inch. So when they go to print, you may have to print these as 96 dots per inch. That'd be change it to 96 and create the PNGs, and that'll change their size over on back in that folder we were in. Or it may be 72, or you may be able to do it from the printer, and I'll discuss how to do it from the printer next time. We'll use the 96 dots per inch for here, and then we'll go over and discuss it. Now, before I leave, I'm going to take a look at the shell size here, and I see that my width is 18.8 inches and my height is 28.5 inches. And I'm going to count here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like 5 is about my biggest one. Okay, and now we'll take a look at the next tutorial. We'll take a look about how to print.